Chinese Communist Party certainly has been open about its interest in biological warfare. And I think we can say, like, regardless of what is or isn't in the Hunter Biden laptop, all we have to do is look back to what Senator Joe Biden was saying back in 2000 about, China normalizing trade relations with the United States. He was pushing a point of view that was pretty common at the time that, what Bill Clinton was pushing,
Yes.
that we need to engage with China. And it would be nice to hear at least some awareness that, hey, that was a bad deal.
Can I give you a more recent example of the problem, which in a way was considerably worse? In May of 2013, Joe Biden was responsible for helping to engineer a memorandum of understanding between the United States and the government of China, the purpose of which was to give the Chinese Communist Party's front companies, and I use that term advisedly because whether they're state-owned enterprises or whether they're nominally in the private sector, they're all doing the bidding, as you know, of the Chinese Communist Party, including, by the way, not a few that are owned and operated by the People's Liberation Army itself. The point of the Memorandum of Understanding was to give them all access to our capital markets. I mentioned this a moment ago. But the point that's particularly problematic and that makes the point we're talking about very dramatically is the terms of that Memorandum of Understanding not only gave these companies access to the investment funds of American investors, they got that access on actually preferential terms. These Chinese companies did not have to submit to or conform with our statutory or regulatory requirements for transparency or accountability, giving them, of course, an advantage over our companies in these markets. But more to the point, giving them an opportunity to sell their stocks, or actually stocks in offshore companies in the Cayman Islands, which actually meant that your investment was not in the company itself. Companies, in some cases, they're actually frauds. Not sound investments, but losing propositions. Something else happened, interestingly enough, a little later in 2013. And that was that Joe Biden went to Beijing in December of that year with his son Hunter on Air Force Two with him. And before Hunter left China, as you know, and as is documented in his laptop, he scarfed up 1.2, I think originally, and ultimately $1.5 billion from the Chinese Communist Party. Some of my friends say that wasn't a bribe. That was a commission on somewhere between 1, 3, maybe as much as $7 or $8 trillion worth of money that migrated to the Chinese Communist Party as a direct result of this Memorandum of Understanding engineered by Joe Biden, and money used, ladies and gentlemen, for the purpose of building out and underwriting and otherwise enabling the unrestricted warfare of the Chinese Communist Party against us. There's never been, I think, a bigger betrayal of our country than that, and it persists to this day.
I mean, we've covered the issue of Hunter Biden's business deals in China, and specifically that deal that he made with, at the time, Devon Archer and Christopher Heinz about, investing in a vehicle to help essentially Chinese state-run companies do business in places like the Congo. And there are very weird things about it. Like when we had Christopher Balding on to talk about it, like why would they even need a foreign company to come in with the Chinese state-run company to fund other Chinese state-run companies? There are definitely strange things about it, but I don't know that we can draw a direct line between that business deal and signing that memorandum of understanding to allow Chinese companies to list on U.S. capital markets.
I fully respect that you may not be able to draw that connection. I am. And I'm saying I think it's not just, post hoc propter hoc. I think it's cause and effect. And why not? Because the value to China of what Joe Biden did in that regard, and I think probably in myriad other ways, you've covered handsomely, for example, his taking a dive completely on the construction by the Chinese communists of bastions in the South China Sea. I mean, essentially, he was the point man assigned by Barack Obama to go stop that from happening, and certainly from having those militarized. He completely failed, abjectly failed. The Chinese got away with it and are now fully militarizing them, as you've documented. Does that have something to do with his son's earnings, a very substantial portion of which, some say 10%, others say, according to Hunter Biden himself in a letter to his daughter, 50% going to the big guy? Is it proof positive? I don't think so, but I think it's certainly grounds for a formal investigation, a criminal investigation, perhaps by a special prosecutor, if not by the United States Congress, into the extent to which the President of the United States has been personally and deeply compromised by our mortal enemy, the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, I think, at a very minimum, there's a lot of Wall Street interest in investing in China. And, Wall Street as a whole, as you pointed out, they sort of see these dollar signs, and you get, Larry Fink and Ray Dalio wanting to put money into China. And so there's that very strong pressure, which has existed not just during the Biden administration, but existed during the Trump administration, during the Obama administration, during the Bush administration, during the Clinton administration, going all the way back to try to make sure that there were opportunities to put those American dollars into China with the promise of strong returns, which we maybe haven't seen, but I'm sure they'll come any day now.
Yes,
but
trust me.
The point is, I do think that there's just been this very substantial pressure over decades to merge the two economies. And that pressure comes from, even though it's a very, very tiny minority of Americans, namely the masters of the universe, as you call them, although I'd reserve that for He-Man, but those people pushing it, right? But that tiny minority is what's pushing government policy.
Yeah. Well, I want to credit Tom Wolfe for popularizing that turn of phrase to apply to these guys. But look, your point is very well taken. But let me clarify something. I'm not sure how much return the average American investor has gotten out of these transactions over the years. I think some have done very well. There's clearly been some hugely successful Chinese IPOs on Wall Street and the like. But I've been told by people in the know that if you actually look at it over all those years, it may be on the order of 2% return on investment, which is trivial. Who has made money by the gajillions, of course, are the Larry Finks and the Ray Dalios and the Steve Schwartzmans and others, the people whose fees and commissions and other transaction benefits have accrued enormous wealth to them. And hence no surprise that they're insistent on continuing to put the rest of our money into these entities. I'm simply saying that where we find ourselves today, and again, I salute what you all have done over the years to make this case, is at the receiving end, whether we acknowledge it or not, whether we even recognize it or not, of unrestricted warfare by an enemy who makes no secret of their determination to destroy us. And what does that make people who are helping, aiding, abetting the enemy that poses that danger? And whether they do it under the rubric of a policy that long since ceased to make any sense at all of engagement, or to use the phrase that was used with the Soviets back in the day, détente, or whether they're just doing it, nakedly out of calculations of individual self advancement, it's unacceptable. And it must stop, in my judgment.